Hello chess friends, chicos, chicas. Today we are back to one of my favorite series, Beating Grandmasters with Principal Chess. And in today's game I am going to be facing off against an online legend back in a far, far away galaxy called the beginning of internet chess, when ICC was the place to play. There was a very well-known player who used to go by the name Yardbird, and he is none other than German Grandmaster Eric Lobron, who at the peak of his career had a rating of 26-25, very impressive indeed. And I faced off against this lovely gentleman on Chess.com, where he goes under the name of Schrödinger's Tiger, and he was indeed an absolute gentleman, but more on that at the very end. So the game started off d4 e6. You would think a very timid affair, but not quite the case, since after knight f3 c5 I decided to turn things sharper with e4, transposing back into the Sicilian Kan, as it turned out, after a6, also known as the neo-Paulsen. Knight c3, and my opponent played he b5. Now, as black, I prefer to play he queen c7, exactly to dodge, among others, the g3 variations, where bishop b4 is very annoying now, and I don't have time to finish development with pretty moves. I have to play at least one ugly, and that kind of messes with the cleanliness of the setup. b5, in strong contrast, allows me to carry out this g3 setup, which I consider to be one of the most dangerous actually against the Kan. If you are not really booked up, it is super easy to get rolled in this variation, no matter the rating. The key idea is a very quick rook e1, knight d5 sacrifice, cracking open the e-file, exposing the king, utilizing the power of the g2 bishop when the pawn steps up to d5, by occasionally even chucking stuff on c6. In fact, I was so tunnel visioned on this idea, a very common mistake of club level chess when players focus on one plan to carry out one particular idea, that they completely forget about the rest of the board and what else they could do. I fell victim of that, because here after knight f6, I remembered that once the bishop comes to e7, let's say pass, we are winning. Because after take, I've got two bishops hanging. Hello? Right? So that's it. But I forgot and didn't even consider that e5 was already winning, because after bishop g2 ef6 the bishop is hanging, and if the bishop goes, wreckage, carnage, you name it, it is all coming your way, friend. And after king f7, rook takes d6, all we have to say is cheers, beautiful coffee. And because the knight on d7 is falling, bishop c8 loses the rook to queen f3. It's tactics galore. The game is over, and I completely missed this. Shameful. Shameful. I instead played a4, because of course the knight d5 idea, which I'm already ready to pull the trigger on, is even stronger when it's provoked by b4, because now you even have a target. Sometimes the pawn can step up to a5. So this is what we are headed for. My opponent, however, took on a4, knowing, by the way, full well that knight d5 was incoming. And after rook a4, he still couldn't play bishop e7 to tuck his king away, because e5 was coming. And so he played queen c7 to protect the b7 bishop, thus preparing bishop e7. But now, my friend, knight d5 is coming. And this is going to be absolutely terminal. If accepted, I have got a few very cool lines to show you. Starting off with a super subtle and positional bishop d2. Hello. Bishop a5, winning the house. And if a5, then queen a1. Just to demonstrate that good chess is played across the entire board. Knight d5 is fundamentally to exploit the king in the middle, and often attacking on the king side, as per the next variation is going to demonstrate. But here now we are breaking through on the queen side. Sensational idea. But it's nothing compared to this. After ed, if knight e5, then of course we can just win the piece with f4. And after bishop e7, take knight f5, the pending d6 threat essentially is decisive, especially given that it's combined with knight g7. So potentially best is bishop e7, knight f5, and then knight e5. Now f4 is still good here, but check this out. Knight g7, king f8, bishop h6, king g8, knight f5. And now we have got an absolute banger of a threat, which is, let's say, rook c8, and the threat is rook e5, d5, queen g4, knight g4, and shout out to the rook on a4 for delivering the coup de grace, the lovely checkmate with rook takes g5. That's another cheers. Wow, what a line. And there is no way of stopping this, by the way. Even knight g6 with the idea of shielding this file fails to take, and then queen g4 again. Of course, all these mates would work with rook g4, but it is so much sexier if we sack in that queen and deliver the rook with the checkmate. Now, none of this happened, unfortunately, because after knight d5, my opponent went back to d8. Now, generally speaking, when you play knight d5 in the Sicilian and they can't even take it, forget about it. It's over. I played rook b4. I had a very vivid memory in my head of a certain Alireza game that I have in my CPR courses. I think in development, but it may be in king safety, where Alireza sacks an exchange in almost exactly the same variation, by the way. On top of the piece, he sacks an exchange on b7 and absolutely wrecks his opponent, and that's exactly what I had planned too. Rook b8, bishop g5. Note that bishop g5 is very good, but knight f5 is also playable here, which is just stock standard to chuck in both of those pieces, and the attack is going to break through like crazy. This is how I defeated the super friendly Spanish Grandmaster, who happens to be one of my fellow coaches at Killer Chess Training, and he is in charge of the friendly homework at Killer Chess Training. Yeah, so that was a game of mine earlier, but here I opted for bishop to g5. Yeah, Renier Castellanos. Sorry, I was stalling there because his name didn't pop my head. Grandmaster Renier Castellanos. An absolute legend, by the way. I already talked about him. If you are a chess improver, you should know the story of Renier Castellanos, who became a Grandmaster in his 40s. Shout out. Anyway, so I played bishop g5, and of course, I was ready to pull the trigger on all kinds of tactics here, except on the correct one, because I was getting a bit excited, and I just completely overlooked that the very idea that I came for, rook b7 and knight c6, was just carnage, game over. I foolishly took e7 first, which makes it a little bit more of a scenic route, because now I am not winning the e7 bishop, but knight c6 is a hell of a move, because, well, it doesn't trap the queen, it forces the queen to f8, which creates this super funny story where the queen can't get out of the back rank, and as a result of that, the king can't castle. So now it is carnage city. I played queen d3. According to the engine, e5 was moved to the point. I did look at it, but I just couldn't get myself to play a move that released the queen from its cage. So queen c4, rook b6, and now e5 was the finish, well and truly. d5 and queen d4. I calculated all of this before I played e5, and I was quite pleased with myself for finding this idea. The basic mate pattern that I saw that I would pursue here was take, rook g8, bishop d5 check, rook c8, and bishop c6 check. Rook c6 and queen d8. That would have been a very nice mate. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. My opponent opted for knight d7, bishop e7, and here, of course, queen g8, bishop takes, rook c6, bishop a3, with a subsequent mate attack on the dark squares would have been lethal, so he decided to sack his queen. Now, when you have a position like this, the key to winning it in the cleanest fashion is to double down on aggression. If you think that you have played a really aggressive game all the way here, this is where you go like, nah, even more aggro. And so we go c4, hitting this, knight b3, hitting the knight, and with this we have obtained a completely winning position. However, here comes the twist. I've got 6 seconds left on the clock. So I really had to speed things up here, and shout out once again for my opponent, who after e6 decided to throw in the towel. And granted, there is mate here, but there are a fair few spy checks to throw in. Rook b7, there are a fair number of moves that black can still chuck in to delay the mate and potentially flag me. However, my opponent demonstrated impeccable sportsmanship and decided to award my attacking chess by resigning the game here, which I thought was very gentlemanly of him. In today's environment and culture, 9 out of 10 players would have tried to flag the heck out of me. So this way I could pose this game as a win against the GM, and that of course makes me very happy, especially because the game was reasonably nice, although I did miss a fair number of tactics, and I want you to be mindful of that, and I am mindful of that most certainly, that it was by no means perfection. I mean, I missed the e5 kindergarten tactic, I missed the rook b7 knight c6 idea, so I missed a fair bit, but overall the general vibe of the game was a really aggressive attacking game, the way most people enjoy scoring a W, especially against a higher rated and higher ranked player. So overall, happy days. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a comment down below. Let's boost the algo together. Press the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.